tell me about yourself a little bit, and so that everyone can recognize you well?
Sure. So my name is Josh, and I live in Tokyo right now, but I'm originally from Canada. So I was born in Toronto, which is not the capital of Canada, but it's the biggest city in Canada. And I lived there until I was about 4 years old. And then my family moved out to the countryside. So I lived on a small farm since I was about 4 years old. And I have a disability. My disability is called cerebral palsy. And basically what it means is that there was damage in my brain, so that the signals that normally tell people, move your hand or move your feet or walk forward, those signals don't properly go down to my body. And so I cannot move my body in the way that I want to move it. And so some muscles are tight, some muscles are loose. And so because of that, I have used a wheelchair pretty much my whole life. So they discovered my disability maybe half a year after I was born. My mother noticed there's something a little bit different, so we went to the doctor, and that's what they decided. And so up until 4 years old, my mother pushed me in a baby stroller. But then when I was 4 years old, I got my first wheelchair. There was a power wheelchair, and I still use a power wheelchair today. So it's a power wheelchair or electric wheelchair, they say. And so I can control it and drive around by myself. And so, yeah, I was living in a small town in Canada, and there was not much around except for a lot of maybe sheep and cows and stuff. But my dad, he worked at IBM, and he always wanted me to use computers because he felt that that would help me in my studies and stuff like that. So I've been using computers for a long time. And in my high school, even though it's in the middle of the countryside, we actually had a Japanese class. And I wanted to get into computers or IT. And because of that, I thought, it's a very competitive field and you need to have a lot of skills. So I thought it'd be good maybe if when I'm looking for a job, if I could say I can speak another language, and particularly, having Japanese would be very good, I felt. So I started taking the Japanese class, and my Japanese teacher, he was very fun. We had a great time. I learned a lot, and I decided that someday I wanted to go and visit Japan. And now, of course, at that time, that was maybe 24 years ago, back in 2000, there was not a lot of information on the internet about accessibility in general or accessibility in Japan at all. So the only information I really had was from guidebooks, and it did not talk about using a wheelchair very much. So, there's a lot of questions, is it going to be possible? And maybe, so of course it made that, oh, maybe it's better not to go. But my parents, they always taught me that it's important to try something, to take a challenge. And, even if it doesn't work out very well, you get a lot of experience from trying it. And so even though there was some questions, my dad said, okay, well, I will go with you. And so I went to Japan for the first time in 2000. And so I was really surprised because it was more accessible than I had thought it was going to be. I was able to do more than I thought I could do. And I really got a lot of encouragement from that. So a lot of, feeling, oh, I can do this. So I went back to Canada. I went to university. I studied mathematics. I also studied some Japanese as well a bit there, and I kept wanting to come back to Japan. So I came for vacation a couple of times. And every time I came back, I found that it is more accessible than it had been the previous time. So there were stations I could not get to before that I was able to get to the second time. And then the third time I could go even further, and I could go to new cities and explore even more each time. So every time I came back, there's a new Japan waiting for me. And then in 2007, I decided I wanted to move here to Japan. And I've been here ever since. So that's about 17 years I've been living in Japan now, in Tokyo. And I became a Japanese citizen in 2016. So yeah. And yeah, I run a website called Accessible Japan because I wanted to give back to people, and I wanted to, let people know that you can come to Japan. You can, have a great time when you're here. you can it's accessible, and I just want to give them the tools so that they can feel comfortable to come here and travel. And I want to build the website that I wish I had back when I first came to Japan. So that's what I'm doing.
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much for, great explanation yourself. Actually, of course, I've read that story, some of the story, like, through a textbook published in Japan, like an English textbook. It's called like a Crown too. And many high school students are using and then reading about your story. And you are in there. And I'm so excited to have you today. So that topic is about like accessible Japan. That's the name of the website too you created. And yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for agreeing, to this interview. And then last year, my students, former students, in the UK, are focused on inquiry-based learning, like a research-based learning. And with a thought-provoking question, like how can we improve accessibility in our society? They researched all over the world. This is also from your story. And this was inspired by Accessible Japan, and in which you are featured. That's great, amazing. And so thanks to your inspiration, my former students in the UK had an enriching academic journey. I truly appreciate your, great contribution to English education in Japan. Really, thank you.
It's my pleasure. Whatever I can do to help.
Yeah, time is limited, so let's go to the, questions. I have some questions today. Maybe like, first question is a little bit related to actually me. I'm a teacher.
Okay.
And your story has a one language teacher, actually Japanese teacher, right? And then, so could you tell me about your Japanese teacher in Canada back then, when you were a high school student, right? Was he a bit different from an average teacher?
I think so, yes, in a good way. So he made learning really fun, and it was a lot of not just from the textbook. We learned a lot of different ways. So he's not Japanese, but he lived in Japan for a long time, and in the school system, he needed to have two things to teach, and so he was already the teacher for auto mechanics. So he would teach students how to fix cars and those kind of engines and stuff like that. That was his main job. But he also wanted to teach English, sorry, teach Japanese. And so he taught it in a very similar way to he taught the automotive class. So we didn't have much homework. It was a very relaxed environment. But I think because of that, that helped me want to continue studying. And the thing is, though, the most important thing I think is that he really loved what he was doing, and he really loved talking about Japan, and he really loved Japan. So we learned a lot of things about Japan, not just grammar and vocabulary. He taught us about Japanese history, Japanese culture. We had opportunities to see a lot of Japanese movies and TV shows that he'd show us. If we ask him questions about Japanese culture or history, he could tell us all these different stories. And because of that, I think that it made it the subject much more real. And so it wasn't just like reading from a textbook, doing homework, doing quizzes, and then doing tests and stuff like that. It was a lot more like Japan is a real living, exciting place, and we want to learn more about it. So so I think it was thanks to him, I think that I got really interested in Japan.
Hearing your, explaining about your teacher, I feel a little very, how can I say, happy or like thrilled, because you were talking about outside the box, like outside the textbook. Okay, your teacher talking about outside the textbook, and you've got a lot of great, episodes. But now you are in textbook.
So you just ignore me then, yeah.
That's interesting part too. Okay, but anyway, yeah. So he must be very brilliant. Also like he must have like experiences and that's, you know, passed on to next generation, including you.
Mhm.
And I've also heard that you've traveled in Japan with him.
He came to Japan,
Came to
I think probably 5 years ago, maybe before Corona. So he comes to Japan quite a bit, and so sort of we just
Right.
got back in touch. We hadn't been in touch for a while, and somebody gave me his email, so I started emailing him.
Yeah.
And
how was his reaction like when you became a citizen, you know, in Japan, and then like when he heard that thing, you know, how was his reaction?
oh, he said he was very proud of me. So and that
Of
meant a
course,
lot to me. So
of course.
yeah, so we had an opportunity to have you know, dinner together. So that was a
Wow.
really great experience to, you know, to be so
That's
far away
wonderful.
from where we first studied together in class, or where he taught me in
Oh,
class, to be
that's
able to
sweet.
be on the other side of the world, and yeah,
Right.
to be together for dinner. So that was really special.
Wow. That's so huge contribution, like not you, but your teacher too. Right.
Yes, he's
Okay,
thanks to him. Yeah.
that's sweet memory, and I'm very happy to hear that. So like, okay, that's great. I want to be that kind of a teacher too. But anyway, let's go to the next question.
Sure you are. Yeah.
Yeah. How can Japan become even more accessible to foreign visitors with disabilities? So what do you think?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple of different ways. There's some things that are a bit like easy to start doing soon. Uh, for example, I think the biggest thing is information. And a lot of times people with disabilities, you know, we want to do the same things that everybody else wants to do, because we see TV shows, we look at Instagram, TikTok, we want to do those things too. But then when we go to see if we can do them or not, there's not enough information about whether it's accessible or not. And if you have a disability, often things are not accessible. So you maybe start thinking that, oh, I probably cannot do it, even though you don't know.
Right.
And so it's sort of maybe the safer thing. And so if people don't have the information, they don't assume that they can do it. More often they assume that they cannot do it.
Right.
And so to have information that says, yes, you can do it, or it's like this, or you know, any information is good. It doesn't necessarily need to be positive. It just needs to be, yes, you can, or no, you can't, or here is what it is like, and you can make your own decision. So that information is really, really important. Also to see people that are similar to you in sort of advertisements, on websites, Instagram, TikTok. It's really, really important. I think that if people see somebody that is like them, then it means that, oh, I can do that too. So if they see people like, so for example, if they think, oh, I want to go to Japan, and they look at like a tourist site, and on the tourist site's website or Instagram, they see people in wheelchairs going to that place, then they think, oh, I can go there too.
Right.
So
Right.
it's really, really important to show people in those kind of in PR as well. So
Right.
I think that's something that can definitely happen really quickly, and can have a really big effect on people.
I see. So the first thing you talked about is like information, right? Like a kind of official one. And then I've also I've seen your talk at Google Japan, and about that information, I've got a great interest in that, and also which is very great idea that like we are familiar with the Google Map, and you talked about like how to go to that goal, but it's normally that's for like people without disabilities, and then if the Google provide like a route, the appropriate route for the, like people with the disabilities or people with you know visually impaired, or like you know some of the hackers have difficulties moving, and like they might have a different information from Google. If they do that, like that's more helpful. You suggested it. That's very great idea, and I actually shamefully like didn't come up with it. But yeah, that's very useful information. And so like information itself, it's ubiquitous, or like in the world spread it out, but it's not always including people with disabilities, right? That's why like you are suggesting. And the second part you talked about like that kind of Instagram or like SNS, if the people with the disability show themselves, like so that more people are familiar with this, how can I say, like atmosphere, and then like okay, it's okay to go to Japan very easily even though you have disabilities. That's familiarity is very important part for get more people familiar to Japan or other countries, right? That's great idea
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
Right.
And for information too, like for people listening, it's not just, you don't need to say this is accessible or this is not accessible. The most important part is to provide this is reality, this is what it's like. And because everybody has a different disability, so for me something that could be easy might be difficult for somebody else, or vice versa, where it's difficult for me but easy for someone else. So it's important just to share the information, and then each person can make the decision by themselves. So any information is good information.
Right. So like sometimes it's subjective, okay, but mostly like objective part of information is very important because it's not only good for him or for her or for them, but this is always individual. Maybe like it's not, how can I say, it's not for all the people like always like effective, Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I understand, and it's understandable too. Okay, the next question. What are the thoughts? What are your thoughts on the opportunities for people with disabilities to study abroad? Because I'm an English teacher, and many students, my students, have studied abroad, like shortly or longer. And do you think they, like people with disabilities, are interested in studying abroad? What do you think?
I know two people who are studying in Tokyo from abroad. They both have disabilities, and there's another person I know that was interested in coming to Japan to study abroad as well. So I think definitely people with disabilities, regardless of that, are very interested in studying abroad because of the great experience they can get from that. I think that there's a lot more challenges for sure for people who have disabilities. And I think that part of that is a lot of times maybe the school or the university, the host school maybe does not have enough experience sometimes, so they don't know what to do. And so, but I think that, if there's maybe one person that does it, it will be easier for the next person to do it. And then maybe easier for the person after that. So it's really important to be, to take that chance at first and to see what can happen after that. But I think definitely people, who are, interested in studying, I think people with disabilities are the same as people without disabilities, and that we want to do the same things. We want to try to have the same opportunities. We want to if we're interested in studying abroad, then it doesn't really matter about disability. It's what we want to do. So there's challenges, but you can overcome those challenges if we try.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And then like I've read before, some articles said like in Japan, suddenly Japanese university environment is not a very best environment yet for the people with disabilities compared to Western countries' universities. And maybe because of the facilities or like because of the concept, like understanding more. But in the future, hopefully, like more universities will accept, like not only accept, but also like provide or setting up some like equipment or like facilities or that accessible things so that like more people with disabilities can learn or experience enjoy their lives. That's one of my hopes. And then like I'm not a rich person. If I have $1 million, okay, I would set up like that kind of funds or a scholarship
Mm,
to provide or help
yeah.
people with the disability. And also, I know that like in Japan, it's not advancing yet. It
Mm,
doesn't provide like many opportunities for people with disability to study abroad with scholarship yet. So like
right.
I think that's one of the in my opinion, okay, but like Japan should do
Mhm.
that kind of step up too.
Yeah. Well, actually, my friend, the first person I mentioned that, was a student here, he passed away 2 years ago. But
I'm
he,
sorry.
um, he came to Japan a number of times on scholarships,
Oh,
and to study abroad. He
oh,
went to University of
okay.
Tokyo. And but after he passed away, his father started a fund, to help people with disabilities to study
Wow,
abroad. So
wow, great.
yeah, it's called the Glide Fund. So maybe somebody
It's
can look
still
that up
exists.
afterwards. And yeah, it just started. Yeah,
Okay,
because
I will research
after
it.
he
I
passed
will
away. So,
research it. Okay,
yeah, for sure.
that's great. Okay. I'm very glad to hear you are saying like people with disabilities also should have a lot of interest in studying abroad. And then, yeah, I
Hmm.
totally agree. Yes, right. Okay. Number 4 question. And what is your vision for the future of language learning with advancements in technology? For example, like artificial
Hmm.
intelligence, like AI or virtual reality or like other accessible supports. Nowadays, like the world, you know, is blessed with a lot of technology, right?
Hmm.
So you, of course, I know you learn Japanese. I know that you are very fluent in Japanese too. But anyway,
Hmm.
I'm an English teacher, language teacher. Okay, so
Yes, we'll
what do you
speak
think?
English then.
Yeah, what either is fine, like a Japanese or English. But what is your vision for the future of language learning with the advancements in technology from your point of view?
Yeah, for myself, I've been using technology when I've been learning languages for a long time. As I mentioned before, my dad worked for IBM, so I've been using a computer since I was a child.
Mm.
And when I was learning Japanese as well, I had a computer program for practicing kanji. So it would bring up a kanji, and you'd have to type in the answer. And
Mm.
I did that many times because to hold a pen or pencil to write is
Right,
a bit more difficult for me.
right.
So having that technology really helped me. And then when a couple of years ago, maybe when I first came to Japan, there's the Nintendo DS.
Okay.
So it's now Nintendo Switch, but at that time the Nintendo DS, it had some software for practicing Japanese. So I use that as well. So I think that
Did you
technology
do
can
that?
have a
Did
real
you use it?
huge benefit. Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, technology can have a huge effect on language learning, I think, and for the future, I think that there's a lot more opportunities now with apps on your phone that you can take with you and study, little bits at a time. As well as you mentioned virtual reality, I think that's really important to have exposure
Mm.
um, when you're learning a language, to not just be using a textbook, but to have opportunities to sort of be immersed in that location. So maybe having
Immerse.
opportunity to use VR to
Yeah.
maybe have a VR program where you can be in Japan studying or something
Right.
like that. So those kind of things can help you get into the feeling of being abroad, and that can help maybe. There's,
Yeah.
I mentioned before the people that want to study abroad, but obviously some people have more you know um, challenging disabilities, and it might not be a possibility for them to do that. But
Mm.
with technology, that could really allow them to experience that as well. And
Yeah.
for with AI as well, obviously, nothing replaces a good teacher, of course, but there's still a lot of times where you can ask questions to explain something in a different way. Can you explain how to use this word in a different way, or a lot of times maybe because it's got so much information that you know the words that are not in a dictionary can also be you can research those words as well. So I think this can make really good study partners for as you study the language. So it's important to just find the thing that works for you, the thing that really helps you to get over things. But when you're learning a language, you also need to have a challenge. So it's important to not to rely on those, but to use them
Um,
as a help. So yeah.
Oh, that last part is a kind of lesson though, but it's very good too, as a teacher. Okay.
Yes. Oh no, it's important because if I
Yes,
didn't have a lot of mistakes, I probably would not have learned as much as I did. So.
yeah. Okay. I really appreciate it. Like every answer is very like inspirational to me. Not maybe I hope like many people. I guess. Anyway, yeah. So that time goes so fast, but this is just like a last message actually from you. So could you offer some encouraging words to those who are hesitant to take the first step? To realize their dreams or study abroad or like just to maybe just take a short trip, for abroad,
Mm.
you know, any situation will do. But could you provide your message?
Yeah. So I think that taking a challenge is really, really important. And even if the answer isn't success, it can lead to good experiences along the way. I learned a lot of things when I was younger by trying. Like for example, I did downhill skiing for wheelchair people. And it was I realized that was not for me. But recently I had the opportunity to go scuba diving, and I really had a great time because I decided to try something new. And it was because of the encouragement of my parents to always to take that challenge, no matter what, just to give it a try is important. And that's the reason I was able to come to Japan in the first place. And that taking that first step there to come just to visit changed my whole life. So that's why
Yes.
I came here to Japan. That's why I became a Japanese citizen, and that's why I want to help other people with disabilities to vacation and have a great time here in this great country.
Wow. That's very encouraging to me too. I'm 41 years old now, with two daughters and yeah, I have a beautiful wife, but I have kind of responsibility, but sometimes, I'm also hesitant to do something new. Okay. But,
Mm.
always, there are so many people like you, like with great experiences, showing your history, sharing your experiences so that like I am also inspired, as I recorded yesterday, I'm also encouraged. Thank you very much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me today. It's
Yes.
great talking.